You were told that manipulation is evil, that honesty, transparency, and kindness are the true marks of a great leader. And yet, history remembers only those who bent truth into obedience and molded perception into power. In this video, we confront the lie of moral leadership and expose how manipulation is not corruption, but command. Leadership is theater, and the world is your audience. The crowd does not follow truth, it follows control. Those who rule understand that influence is rarely gained through sincerity, but through strategy, through the quiet art of shaping minds while appearing righteous. This is not a world of fairness, it is a stage of perception. To lead is to manipulate, not through deceit for its own sake, but through direction of human desire. So sit in the shadows with me, and watch how the puppeteers of history pulled the strings. Not with force, but with subtlety. Because true power does not shout. It whispers. You have been told that leadership is built on virtue, that to guide others, one must be pure, honest, and selfless. But tell me when in history has truth alone ever commanded obedience? Human beings do not follow honesty. They follow confidence, appearance, and the illusion of certainty. The crowd does not crave truth, it craves direction. The illusion of moral leadership is the most effective form of manipulation ever devised. It is the art of appearing righteous while acting with ruthless precision beneath the surface. Look at the figures humanity calls great. The kings, the prophets, the revolutionaries, all draped in moral grandeur. But beneath their halos was calculation. Moses used divine authority to unite fractured tribes. Julius Caesar spoke of the Republic while dismantling it piece by piece. Even the Church in its might ruled not by miracles, but by the illusion that its hand was God's. Moral leadership is theater. The costume is virtue, but the play is power. You see, morality is not the foundation of leadership, it is its disguise. Because men are not drawn to power when it shows its fangs, they are drawn to it when it smiles. Ask yourself this: would you follow the man who says, "I will use you for my ambitions," or the one who says, "I will save you for your own good"? Both may lead you into the same fire, but the second does it with your consent. This is the true genius of the illusion control through voluntary obedience. The greatest manipulators do not impose their will. They seduce it. They wrap ambition in noble language. They weaponize moral ideals as tools of persuasion. They know that if people believe they are serving virtue, they will march into their own enslavement smiling. History has never rewarded the sincere idealist. It rewards the one who appears to be one, because perception rules reality, and leadership exists only through the perception of followers. Consider Napoleon. He crowned himself emperor, yet spoke endlessly of liberty and the rights of man. A contradiction, yes, but a brilliant one. He understood that the masses would forgive tyranny if it wore the mask of destiny. He became their symbol, their savior. And in that illusion, they gave him absolute control. Even in the modern age, this game has not changed. The politician sells you morality to gain power, then sells you fear to keep it. The CEO preaches company values, while exploiting loyalty for profit. The influencer speaks of authenticity while curating every breath to manipulate admiration. Morality is no longer a compass. It is currency, but do not despise them too quickly. They are merely playing the game that humanity demands. For if they were to speak without illusion, you would not listen. If they led without masks, you would not follow. Humans crave virtue in words, but power in action. They say they want honesty, yet reward the beautiful lie. So the intelligent leader learns the paradox: to move people, you must first deceive their perception of you. This is not cruelty. It is nature. Every species adapts to its environment. In the jungle of human hierarchy, the disguise of virtue is survival. You see it in politics, in business, even in love. Those who appear too blunt are ignored, those who appear too honest are feared. But cloak your intent in goodness, and every door opens. The illusion of moral leadership is not about hypocrisy. It is about control through belief. The wise understand that belief shapes obedience more than law ever can. This is why revolutions fail and empires endure. Because revolutions shout truth, empires whisper morality, and the whisper lasts longer. Now, here's the real discomfort you use this illusion to. When you want respect, you posture. When you want sympathy, you perform humility. Even you wear masks to gain what you desire. Leadership merely magnifies what already exists in every mind. The will to appear better than we are, to shape others' perception for survival. It is not evil. It is evolution refined. So the next time you see a leader praised for goodness, ask not what he says, but what he gains from being seen as good, because behind every moral leader is a strategist who learned this truth early. That sincerity is optional, but the appearance of sincerity is indispensable. And once you understand this illusion, you will see through every smiling face that commands the crowd. But that realization leads to a colder question. If morality is only the mask of power, power is not about truth. It is about perception, about who defines what truth is. Control a person's perception, and you no longer need to control their body. They will imprison themselves in the illusion you create. Most people believe they see the world as it is. They don't. They see it as someone wants them to see it. Every regime, every religion, every corporation knows this principle. Manipulation is not always deception. It is the art of directing human focus. And attention, my friend, is the currency of control. When you control what people look at, you control what they think about. When you control what they think about, you control what they value. And when you control what they value, you own them. Perception is the battlefield where all power struggles unfold. Look at history. Caesar conquered Rome not just with armies, but with image. He wrote his own accounts of war, glorifying himself as the destined ruler of Rome. He made his victories seem divine, inevitable. By the time he crossed the Rubicon, Rome's mind was already conquered. That is the essence of controlled perception. You do not win through force, you win through narrative. The wise understand that facts are powerless without framing. A leader's greatest weapon is not the sword, but the story told about it. Even today, nations rise and fall not by their armies, but by the myths they construct. The myth of freedom, the myth of progress, the myth of morality. People will defend these illusions as if they were sacred truth, because perception, once internalized, becomes identity. Ask yourself, how often have you believed something because it felt true? Because it aligned with your fear, your hope, your bias. That is how the skilled manipulator works. They do not argue. They arrange reality in such a way that resistance feels unnatural. In the hands of a master, perception becomes architecture. Every word, every symbol, every silence is a design meant to guide thought. It is not the loudest who commands minds, but the one who defines context. Take religion. Its endurance does not lie in miracles, but in perception. The perception of divine authority, of moral order, of eternal consequence. Even doubt becomes a form of obedience when it exists inside the framework of belief. Or consider the modern manipulator, the politician. He smiles into cameras, speaks of unity, promises freedom. Yet behind him, every gesture, every phrase, every backdrop of flags and colors is engineered. He knows that people vote not for policies, but for symbols, for how they feel when he speaks. Manipulation is not about lies. It is about emphasis. You need not erase the truth, you simply hide it behind brighter lights. Psychology proves this again and again. The mind craves simplicity, pattern, and reassurance. The manipulator feeds it exactly that. Order amidst chaos, purpose amidst uncertainty. And once a mind feels safe within a perception, it stops questioning. Controlled perception is not tyranny. It is seduction. It makes obedience feel voluntary. It turns influence into devotion. Think of advertising. They do not sell you a product. They sell you identity. A car becomes freedom. A phone becomes status. A brand becomes belonging. Each symbol engineered to exploit human longing. The need to be seen, admired, significant. The manipulator studies these longings like a scientist studies a specimen. He knows that every human has blind spots, emotional shortcuts that bypass reason. Fear, love, shame, pride. These are not emotions to him. They are levers. Pull the right one and perception bends instantly. But here lies the darker truth. Manipulation works best not when imposed, but when desired. People yearn to be deceived if the illusion flatters them. Tell them what they want to believe. That they are good, intelligent, chosen. And they will defend your illusion as if it were their own creation. And so, control becomes invisible. The puppet believes it dances freely. Even the most independent mind is not immune. You too live within perceptions built by others, media, culture, even your upbringing. Everything you think, normal, is a manipulation so ancient it became invisible. The question is not whether you are being manipulated. The question is whether you see the strings. Once you recognize perception as a tool, you can use it. You can shift how others see you. You can define reality before others define it for you. That is the first step toward true power. The ability to construct the stage upon which others perform. But perception, once controlled, must be maintained. The moment it cracks, rebellion begins. And that is where the next secret of manipulation lies. In managing emotion itself. Because what the mind sees, the heart must accept. Power is not held by the strongest mind, but by the one who understands emotion the best. You cannot command logic. It resists. But emotion obeys. Human beings are not rational creatures who feel. They are emotional creatures who rationalize, and the leader who understands this does not argue. He orchestrates. Emotion is the puppet string of civilization. It makes men march to war, fall in love, repent, rebel, obey. Reason only follows where emotion leads. So the art of manipulation is not to convince, but to move. To make another feel what you need them to feel, so that their own mind betrays them willingly. History remembers tyrants and saints alike for the same reason. They mastered emotional leverage. They knew how to ignite fear, devotion, or hope with surgical precision. It is never truth that builds empires. It is the emotion of belief. Look at Alexander. He did not conquer through numbers. He conquered through vision. He made his soldiers believe they were chosen, destined for glory. They fought not for him, but for the feeling of being immortal in his shadow. Or consider the church. For centuries, it ruled through guilt and salvation. Two opposing emotions held in perfect balance. It offered fear of damnation and the hope of redemption, a psychological trap so elegant that even rebellion felt like sin. This is emotional leverage, to hold both the whip and the promise in one hand, to enslave not the body but the soul. You can see it everywhere even now. In politics, fear is the currency. In love, validation is the weapon. In leadership, admiration is the chain. Ask yourself how many of your choices were truly yours. How many were born not from thought, but from how someone made you feel? The manipulator studies this. He observes what triggers pride, shame, fear, or loyalty. Then he learns to play them like notes in a song. The greatest leaders are emotional architects. They design atmospheres, not arguments. They walk into a room and know instantly who needs praise, who needs doubt, who needs silence. Their control is invisible because it feels like warmth, not domination. That is the paradox. The best manipulators do not look powerful. They look understanding. They appear to care. But beneath every comforting word is calculation. Psychology has long confirmed what rulers knew intuitively: emotion precedes reason. The amygdala reacts before the prefrontal cortex can even interpret why. The manipulator does not wait for the brain to think. He strikes while it feels. He knows that fear sharpens obedience. That guilt weakens resistance. That admiration blinds judgment. So he weaves them together like threads of a web. Even love, the purest of emotions, is a tool of control when understood correctly. Love makes people justify what they would otherwise condemn. It silences suspicion. It turns exploitation into sacrifice. That is why emotional manipulators often appear charismatic. They do not take control by force. They are given it. Think of modern leaders, celebrities, even gurus. Their words are less important than their tone. They mirror your emotions, speak your fears, echo your desires. They make you feel seen. And that feeling becomes the leash. Do not mistake this for malice. Manipulation through emotion is not always cruelty. It can inspire, unite, even heal. But every act of emotional influence carries a choice. Will you use it to elevate or to enslave? The wise do not reject emotional power. They master it. Because emotion will rule whether you control it or not. And here lies the hidden danger. If you cannot control your emotions, someone else will. They will find your weaknesses, your insecurities, your secret needs, and build chains out of them. That is how kings are overthrown, how lovers are broken, how followers are made. You may think you are immune. But manipulation is not a battle of intelligence. It is a war of feelings. Even the sharpest mind falters when the heart is touched correctly. So learn your triggers. Study your fears. Guard your admiration. Because every emotion is a door. And someone, somewhere, is waiting to walk through it. Emotional leverage is not about power over others. It is about understanding that power flows through emotion. Whoever channels it, commands it. Every ruler faces the same question. Is it better to be loved or feared? The weak answer, loved. The wise answer, both. But to be both, you must first understand the anatomy of power. Love inspires loyalty. Fear ensures obedience. Together, they form the dual heartbeat of control. Too much love, and people forget who leads them. Too much fear, and they remember only how to betray. Power survives only in the narrow space between the two. Consider history's masters of balance. Augustus Caesar ruled Rome not through terror, but through reverence. He built monuments, promised peace, and made Rome believe he was its savior. Yet behind that calm facade, he purged rivals silently, not with rage, but with precision. His subjects trusted him and feared disappointing him. That is the perfection of control, when fear hides beneath admiration. Now, contrast that with Caligula. He ruled through naked cruelty, slaughtering at whim, delighting in terror. His power burned bright, then collapsed in blood. Fear without trust is a fire. It consumes the hand that lights it. You see, fear must be calculated. It must never be chaos. The wise do not threaten, they imply. They do not rage, they demonstrate. Fear is strongest when it feels inevitable, not when it feels desperate. And love, that too must be managed. Love is dangerous when it breeds familiarity. Followers who love too much begin to believe they are equals. They confuse kindness for weakness, mercy for permission. So the leader must appear compassionate but remain untouchable. Approachable yet distant. Warm yet unpredictable. Only then does love transform into loyalty. Loyalty forged from awe, not attachment. Think of a lion tamer. He must make the beast trust him, yet never forget the whip exists. That tension keeps harmony. The same principle governs empires, armies, and even relationships. People obey not because they must, but because they fear losing your approval. This is the subtle form of fear, the emotional one. It is quieter than violence, but infinitely more effective. When a follower dreads your disappointment more than your punishment, you have mastered them completely. Psychology proves this balance again and again. Fear activates survival, trust lowers resistance. Combined, they make the perfect behavioral cage. The manipulator uses fear to define boundaries and trust to make the prison comfortable. You see this everywhere. In governments, corporations, even personal dynamics. A leader creates crisis to awaken fear, then offers safety to earn devotion. The cycle repeats until dependence replaces awareness. Observe the modern state. Citizens fear instability, fear danger, fear the other. And so, they trust authority to protect them. The more they fear, the deeper their trust grows. The genius of control lies not in domination, but in synchronization, making fear and trust dance together until they appear as one emotion. Even in private life, this principle reigns. In love, people stay not just because they trust, but because they fear losing what feels safe. In business, employees obey not just out of duty, but out of fear of disapproval, fear of exile from the tribe. Every structure of loyalty has fear at its root, but balance is everything. If you lean too heavily into fear, you breed rebellion. Too deeply into trust, you invite betrayal. The wise leader learns to adjust, to raise fear when loyalty softens, to feed trust when suspicion grows. It is not ethics that maintain power, it is equilibrium. Even the most moral of leaders must understand this. Virtue alone cannot command. The crowd must feel something greater than logic, a mixture of reverence and restraint. They must love you enough to follow, and fear you enough to never question why. Think of it as gravity. Fear pulls people down, trust keeps them from drifting away. You need both to keep the world orbiting around you. But here's the cruel truth: maintaining this balance drains the soul. You cannot be loved and feared without playing a part. You must conceal warmth behind discipline and disguise control as care. It is not the power itself that corrupts. It is the endless act of sustaining it. Every great ruler, every master manipulator, eventually faces the same exhaustion: the fear of losing control over the very emotions they command. Because once fear or trust tilts too far, power collapses. The people you ruled begin to see behind the mask, and once they see, they cannot unsee. Power is never pure, it wears masks, and the most effective mask of all is morality. The ethical mask of manipulation is not about deception for its own sake. It is about disguise, the art of clothing cold strategy in the language of virtue, because people obey conscience more willingly than command. You see, morality is the stage costume of control. Every ruler, every influencer, every manipulator knows this: to control others, you must first appear righteous. The crowd does not question a man who acts for the greater good. It bows to him. Consider history's grandest players. They never declared. They declared, "I seek justice, peace, equality." And in those words, they gathered armies. Robespierre led the reign of terror in the name of virtue. He justified bloodshed as moral cleansing. Lenin promised equality but used ideology to sanctify domination. Even empires cloaked conquest in civilization. This is the genius of the ethical mask. People will forgive manipulation if it feels moral. The human mind cannot bear the thought of being deceived by evil. But it will surrender eagerly to good. Ask yourself, how many times have you followed someone because you believed they were right, not realizing they were simply effective? The ethical manipulator understands that righteousness is the most seductive illusion of all. He speaks with compassion, acts with calculation, and hides the blade behind the promise of progress. Why? Because morality provides immunity. It makes control appear noble, even necessary. Once the manipulator becomes the moral authority, resistance turns into sin. Psychology confirms this elegantly. Humans crave moral validation. We want to believe our choices are just, even when they are not. The manipulator exploits this by offering moral comfort. He does not force obedience. He moralizes it. Think of modern leadership. Politicians speak of protecting freedom while limiting it. Corporations speak of empowering people while exploiting them. Even influencers preach authenticity while monetizing attention. Each drapes manipulation in moral tone, a performance so convincing that even they begin to believe it. But let us not pretend this is new. The church mastered it centuries ago. By defining sin, it controlled behavior. By granting forgiveness, it controlled loyalty. It ruled not through chains, but through moral framing, shaping the soul, not just the sword. The true strategist does not reject morality, he weaponizes it. He understands that to justify power, one must moralize domination. Every decision can be framed as service to something greater. Peace, order, love, destiny. The moral banner turns manipulation into mission. But here lies the paradox. Even the manipulator becomes entangled in his own disguise. The longer he wears the ethical mask, the more he risks believing it. History's tyrants rarely saw themselves as villains. They saw themselves as saviors misunderstood. Moral illusion, once repeated, infects its creator. And this is the true danger of the mask. It does not just deceive others. It deceives the self. You too wear masks. When you justify manipulation as or protection, when you disguise ambition as purpose, when you tell yourself you are being honest while crafting an image, it is not hypocrisy. It is human nature. Morality is the softest prison. You build its walls yourself and call them principles. The question is not whether you wear a mask, but whether you control it, or it controls you. To use ethics as strategy requires brutal clarity. You must see morality not as absolute truth, but as language, a dialect of influence. You speak it to guide others, but you must never let it silence your reason. Because once you believe your own moral performance, your vision blurs, you stop manipulating perception and start being manipulated by it. The ethical mask grants immense power, the ability to rule hearts through faith instead of fear. But it also carries the seed of downfall, self-righteous blindness. The manipulator who forgets he is manipulating becomes the most dangerous kind, not to others, but to himself. So, how do you use morality without being consumed by it? How do you lead with virtue's glow while keeping strategy's darkness intact? That is the razor's edge of power. To appear good, do what is necessary, and remember which one is truth. Every saint who ruled was a strategist in disguise. Every tyrant began as a moralist. Morality and manipulation are not opposites. They are reflections of the same mirror. And those who learn to look into that mirror without flinching, those are the ones history remembers. But the lesson is not finished, because behind morality and illusion lies the final weapon of power, not manipulation of others, but mastery of self. Power does not need permission, it needs perception. To control people without them knowing is not sorcery, it is psychology refined into art. You do not force obedience, you guide belief. You do not take power, you make them give it. The greatest rulers never shouted commands, they whispered suggestions. They built illusions so elegant that people called them truth. And when the crowd believed, control became invisible. Remember, true manipulation is not cruelty, it is choreography. You direct emotion, craft perception, and let the world dance to a rhythm it cannot hear. So ask yourself, are you the one pulling the strings, or the one being moved by them? If this lesson stirred something in you, a hunger for control, or the desire to understand it, then stay close. Comment your thoughts below, subscribe for more Machiavellian strategies, and share this with those who still believe power is honest. Let them watch, and let them learn who truly leads.